When we hear the word veil today, we almost automatically think in terms of religion, identity, or personal choice. But in the ancient Near East, veiling had a far sharper edge. It was not primarily about modesty or belief, it was about law, hierarchy, and control. Few legal systems make this clearer than the Middle Assyrian laws, MAL, compiled roughly between the 14th and 11th centuries BCE. In Assyria, veiling was not a private decision. It was a legal marker, a visible badge that declared a woman's place in society. To veil, or not to veil, was to publicly announce one's legal status, sexual respectability, and relationship to male authority. The law quite literally clothed women in power or stripped them of it. The Middle Assyrian legal world. The Middle Assyrian laws come from a society obsessed with order, hierarchy, and discipline. Assyria was not merely a militaristic empire outwardly, it was deeply authoritarian inwardly. Law was not designed to protect individuals equally but to preserve social stratification, especially between free and unfree, elite and common, male and female. Unlike modern law codes, which often claim neutrality, Assyrian law was unapologetically status-based. Who you were mattered more than what you did. This is especially evident in laws regulating women's behavior, sexuality, and appearance. Veiling laws appear primarily in Tablet A, among regulations concerning sexual conduct, marriage, adultery, and punishment. These laws do not describe veiling as cultural tradition, they prescribe it as legal obligation or legal prohibition, depending on the woman. Who was allowed to veil? The Middle Assyrian laws draw a sharp line between women who must veil and women who must not veil. Women required or permitted to veil included: married women, widows of free men, Assyrian women under the protection of a husband or father. Women explicitly forbidden from veiling included: prostitutes, slave women, concubines without legal recognition, certain lower status dependents. This distinction reveals the core logic of Assyrian veiling: the veil signified male ownership and legitimate sexual exclusivity. A veiled woman was sexually reserved for one man, her husband, or for a patriarchal household. An unveiled woman, by contrast, was legally and sexually accessible, or at least not protected by exclusive male rights. Veiling as legal language. In Assyria, the veil functioned like a legal document worn on the body. It communicated, without words, whether a woman was under male guardianship. This meant that veiling was not about hiding women, it was about classifying them. One law states that if a prostitute veiled herself in public, she was to be punished severely, her ears cut off, her garments confiscated, and public humiliation imposed. The crime here was not deception in a moral sense, but status fraud. A prostitute who veiled herself was falsely claiming a protected legal position she did not possess. This reveals something striking: the law was less concerned with sexual morality than with social boundaries. Prostitutes were allowed to exist. What they were not allowed to do was blur the line between respectable women and women outside patriarchal protection. Punishment and the body. The punishments for violating veiling laws were intentionally brutal. Cutting off ears, whipping, shaving heads, these were not random penalties. They were symbolic mutilations, designed to permanently mark the offender's body. The irony is chilling: while the veil was meant to mark status temporarily, punishment marked it forever. The female body became a legal canvas upon which obedience or transgression was inscribed. Even more revealing is the role of men in enforcement. Husbands were expected to police their wives' veiling. If a married woman appeared unveiled and her husband failed to punish her, he himself could be penalized. Patriarchal authority came with responsibility, and legal liability. Gendered law, unequal logic. What is conspicuously absent from the Middle Assyrian laws is any equivalent regulation for men's appearance. Male sexuality was regulated through property and violence, female sexuality was regulated through visibility. This asymmetry tells us that veiling was not about modesty in a general sense, it was about controlling women's reproductive capacity. A veiled woman was a woman whose children would belong to a specific male lineage. In a society obsessed with inheritance, legitimacy, and bloodlines, this control was essential. In my view, this is one of the clearest early examples of biopolitical governance, the state managing bodies, reproduction, and social meaning through law. Long before modern states regulated citizens through documents and IDs, Assyria regulated women through cloth. Veiling and class hierarchy. Veiling laws also reinforced class distinctions among women themselves. A freeborn woman had legal protections denied to slaves and prostitutes. Yet these protections came at the cost of surveillance and restriction. A slave woman who veiled herself was punished not because she was immoral, but because she dared to imitate freedom. Her unveiled status visually reaffirmed her vulnerability. Conversely, a free woman who failed to veil endangered not only herself but the symbolic order of Assyrian society. This dual function of veiling, as both privilege and constraint, is crucial. Veiling elevated women legally, but only by binding them tighter to male authority. Comparison with other ancient law codes. When compared with the Code of Hammurabi, the Middle Assyrian laws appear harsher and more explicit in their bodily control. Hammurabi focuses more on economic compensation, Assyria focuses on corporal punishment and public shame. Later Achaemenid Persian practices inherited some Assyrian ideas but softened their legal brutality. The Assyrian system stands out for its starkness, it does not pretend to protect women's dignity. It openly prioritizes order over compassion. Ideology behind the law. The ideological foundation of Assyrian veiling laws is a worldview in which society must be visibly ordered. Chaos begins when signs no longer match status, when a slave looks like a free woman, or a prostitute like a wife. From this perspective, the veil is not merely clothing, it is political symbolism. It transforms the female body into a walking declaration of social truth, legible to any observer. This obsession with visibility aligns with Assyria's broader culture, monumental reliefs, public executions, royal inscriptions carved in stone. Power had to be seen to exist. Modern reflections. Reading these laws today is unsettling, not only because of their cruelty, but because of their familiarity. The idea that women's clothing signals morality, respectability, or legal worth has not disappeared. It has simply changed vocabulary. What Assyria made explicit, your clothes determine your rights, modern societies often disguise as culture, tradition, or choice. This does not mean ancient and modern veiling practices are identical, but it reminds us that law has always used the body as evidence. Conclusion. The Middle Assyrian veiling laws are among the earliest known examples of gender-specific legal regulation based on appearance. They reveal a society where women's bodies were legally coded, socially ranked, and violently disciplined. Veiling was neither purely oppressive nor purely protective. It was a mechanism of classification, elevating some women while condemning others to vulnerability. Ultimately, these laws exposed the brutal clarity of Assyrian justice: order mattered more than empathy, and visibility mattered more than consent. Understanding these laws helps us see how deeply legal systems can penetrate everyday life, and how ancient some of our modern debates truly are.